I'd love to engage you in a discussion, not now, about where we went from the end of the first Bush administration and the Powell doctrine on the use of U.S. force to where we've evolved today, and you've touched on that a little bit. But my real question is, you mentioned a little bit about the U.S. State Department during negotiations choosing to ignore violations by Arafat and others.
Right.
My question really boils down to is, with this maybe emerging growth of international tribunals and criminal tribunals, the question that you always get, or that we always get as being part of an international tribunal, and that you always live with, and so on. So my question goes with, how would you deal with it in the State Department? Is, one, does the international tribunal, or the threat of prosecution, does it really enter into the minds of these people that are potentially indicted? In other words, does the threat of an international prosecution, which is relevant today, that wasn't 30 years ago, affect their behavior? In other words, do they think about, am I going to go out and order these crimes and commit these crimes because now there's a fair chance that I may be prosecuted? And then the follow-on question to that, does the indictment, now that they're indicted, affect their behavior? You've got Bashir, we shouldn't have indicted him because now that he's indicted, he's not going to leave. Assad, the threat of being indicted, will that cause him to stay there longer than he otherwise would have? Because now the option of sliding away into exile somewhere and living out his life in luxury is diminished.
I think there's no overarching principle to govern all of these situations. Number one, I think when a leader is involved in a fight, as Bashar Assad is, for the survival of his community, the idea of a prosecution is probably irrelevant. When you kill 100,000 of your citizens using chemical weapons or Scud missiles, you have so far gone beyond the pale that you aren't going to consider not doing something if it would enhance your prospects to survive because you are fearful of the risk of being indicted. But I would say, as a second issue, in a situation like that, I don't think you should care one bit about whether or not you should, as far as I'm concerned, we should be full steam ahead. Mm-hmm. We have certain principles we need to maintain. We do that not just, I might add, to have an effect, presumably, on the person you're trying to indict. You do that to maintain dignity, authority, rule of law, a set of international standards which offers some hope and accountability for others who are watching. So I never was put into a situation where there was this kind of moral choice. I'm not sure, I could never, if I was working on Syria and this became a critically important issue, and the State Department was thinking whether or not to oppose, facilitate, enhance the indictment of the International Criminal Court of Bashar Assad, and you were writing a memo to the president, I'm not sure I could sign on to a view that said we can't do this because it threatens some diplomatic initiative at hand. I couldn't sign up to that because there are other reasons other than the impact that such an indictment is going to have that I think give this a legitimacy and a logic all of its own. I have mixed feelings about the death penalty. Very mixed feelings, obviously, in large part because of the DNA issue. But, there is an argument that society, whether or not the death penalty is effective as a deterrent, that the system people need to understand that in the case of certain crimes, the state is willing to seek a maximum penalty in order to protect the kind of organizing principles of society whether or not it's actually effective. And in a way, this issue is the same. You're gonna do this and you should go ahead and do it, regardless of the diplomatic or political consequences, because it serves other purposes. And given the genocides in contemporary history, I don't think you have no other choice, in my judgment, but to go forward.
Well, I'm a prosecutor, so that's certainly the position that I would take.
That would be my view.
Interestingly, your comment on the death penalty, just a footnote, in that, after the convictions of all of those in Sierra Leone, and in particular after the conviction of Charles Taylor, I traveled throughout the country of Sierra Leone, meeting people in, villages that, you literally had to walk to get to, and meeting them. And the first question, inevitably, was always, why isn't he being put to death after we convicted him?
Right.
And, and that's the culture. I mean, to them, his crimes deserve the death penalty.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, well, thank you. Appreciate it.